The physical geography and the history that we've just described directly affects the current events in Africa, especially across that belt of countries that stand in the transition zone between the wet south and the dry north. And in the remainder of this lecture, we'll look more closely at three of these countries: Nigeria, pictured here in the center, Sudan in the east or on the right of this illustration, and finally Mali in the west. Nigeria, the most populous country in Africa, is located here at the crux between the western bulge and southern extension of the continent. In theory, Nigeria looks like a unified country with a central river system drawing the entire geographic complex together in a great axis that runs from north to south. In reality, however, Nigeria is deeply divided. First, in terms of its vegetation, as illustrated here, between a relatively dry Sahel tapering into desert in the north and a relatively wet south, as we've indicated in our previous lectures. Secondly, in part because of this geographic differences, it is also fragmented into a large number of linguistic groups. In truth, no one really knows how many languages are spoken in Nigeria, but it's certainly in the hundreds. And as this slide illustrates, there are major language groups in the north, the Hausa and Fulani, in the west, the Yoruba, and here in the southeast, illustrated a small group called the Igbo. The distribution of population across this geographically fragmented and linguistically divided territory includes in the north the Fulani herders, as illustrated in this slide. These are desert and steppe people whose economy derives primarily from pastoralism or grazing of animals, who are primarily Muslim in religion, and who relate to and connect with that axis of trade that we described earlier across the Sahara Desert to centers in the interior of West Africa. They are lighter in skin color and quite distinct from their fellow Nigerians in southern Nigeria, as pictured here. These are people with darker in skin who practice agriculture rather than animal husbandry because they live in a moister area suitable for agriculture. They're more likely to have been influenced by European missionaries and therefore practice Christianity or native animism rather than Islam, as is practiced in the north. This slide, which illustrates the divisions between an Islamic north and a Christian south, also reminds us of the violence that has occurred along this boundary between rival religious groups. Those of you who may have read the greatest of all African novels, Chinua Achebe's Things Fall Apart, will be reminded that Achebe himself was a Christian convert, son of a religious figure who lived first in Igbo country, described some of the conflicts that emerged during the colonial period, and then himself left Nigeria as a result of the civil war between North and South in the late 1960s. These divisions between the Islamic North and the Christian South, between the herder population of the interior and the agricultural population of the coast, has been illustrated in a tragic way in recent years by the attacks by Muslims on Christians and by Christians on Muslims along this boundary zone between North and South. Boko Haram, or the ultra-religious Islamic group that seeks to root out all Western influences, regularly attacks and destroys Christian communities in the central part of the country, and Christian communities have responded in kind. A second division, also geographic, has also marked the politics and economics of Nigeria. This is the division between the Niger Delta, which is rich in oil production, and the rulers of the country who tend to come from the northern and western portions, the Hausa, Fulani, and Yoruba peoples. This has ignited a war of resistance by people in the Delta, now led by the movement for emancipation of the Niger Delta, or MEND, M-E-N-D, which has fought a guerrilla war against the government of Nigeria and the major oil companies that are involved in the development of oil fields in the Niger Delta. In sum, the politics of Nigeria are very much dominated by north-south splits that coincide with the geographic, rainfall, and vegetation differences between a wet south and a dry north.